Anaximander said that the first living creatures were born in moisture, enclosed in thorny barks, and that as their age increased they came forth onto the drier part, and when the bark had broken off, they lived a different kind of life for a short time. He says, further, that in the beginning man was born from creatures of a different kind because other creatures are soon self-supporting, but man alone needs prolonged nursing. For this reason he would not have survived if this had been his original form. Anaximander the Milesian, a disciple of Thales, first dared to draw the inhabited world on a tablet. After him Hecataeus the Milesian, a much-traveled man, made the map more accurate, so that it became a source of wonder. Both history and tradition are silent as to how Thales arrived at his conclusions, except that Aristotle attempts to offer his opinion as a reason, that is that Thales must have been influenced by the consideration of the moisture of nutriment, and based his conclusion on a rationalistic interpretation of the myth of Oceanus. This, however, is regarded as mere conjecture on the part of Aristotle. Thales, too, to judge from what is recorded of his views, seems to suppose that the soul is in a sense the cause of movement, since he says that a stone magnet or lodestone has a soul because it causes movement to iron. This wise Thales died while present as a spectator at a gymnastic contest, being worn out with heat and thirst and weakness, for he was very old, and the following inscription was placed on his tomb. You see, this tomb is small, but recollect, the fame of Thales reaches to the skies. Pythagoras was associated with so many legends that few scholars dare to say much about his life, his personality, or even his teachings, without adding that we cannot be sure our information is accurate. That there was a man named Pythagoras who founded the sect called the Pythagoreans we need not doubt. Among the witnesses to his historicity was his younger contemporary Heraclitus, who thought ill of him. Nevertheless, it is notoriously difficult to distinguish between the teachings of Pythagoras himself and those of his followers, the Pythagoreans. What he taught his disciples no one can say for certain, for they maintained a remarkable silence. All the same, the following became generally known. First, he said that the soul is immortal. Second, that it migrates into other kinds of animals. Third, that the same events are repeated in cycles, nothing being new in the strict sense. And finally, that all things with souls should be regarded as akin. Pythagoras seems to have been the first to introduce these beliefs to Greece. Moreover, the Egyptians are the first to have maintained the doctrine that the soul of man is immortal and that, when the body perishes, it enters into another animal that is being born at the same time. And when it has been the complete round of the creatures of the dry land and of the sea and of the air, it enters again into the body of a man at birth, and its cycle is completed in 3,000 years. There are some Greeks who have adopted this doctrine, some in former times and some in later, as if it were their own invention. Their names I know, but refrain from writing down. Some say that he was satisfied with honey alone, or a bit of honeycomb or bread. He did not touch wine during the day, or, for a treat, vegetables boiled or raw. Seafood he ate but rarely. His robe, which was white and spotless, and his bedclothes, which were also white, were of wool. For linen had not yet reached those parts. He was never observed to relieve himself, or to have intercourse, or to be drunk. He used to avoid laughter, and all pandering to scurrilous jokes and vulgar stories. Once they say that Pythagoras was passing by when a puppy was being whipped, and he took pity and said, "Stop, do not beat it, for it is the soul of a friend that I recognized when I heard it giving tongue." If one were to believe the Pythagoreans that events recur in an arithmetical cycle, and that I shall be talking to you again sitting just as you are now, with this pointer in my hand, and that everything else will be just as it is now, then it is plausible to suppose that the time, too, will be the same as now. By rarefaction, air becomes fire, and by condensation, air becomes successively wind, water, and earth. Observable qualitative differences, fire, wind, water, earth, are the result of quantitative changes, that is, of how densely packed is the basic principle. Homer and Hesiod ascribe to the gods whatever is infamy and reproach among men, theft and adultery, and deceiving each other. To know many things, to know the causes of thunder and lightning and earthquakes, is good, but it is better to understand the one thing which underlies all of these, the thought that steers all things through all things. This is wisdom.